Greetings, and welcome to the Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. We hope you enjoy what you're about to see, and you can find us at the corner of Broadway and Church Streets at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings, or you can find us online at bgmethodist.org and on Facebook at Bowling Green First United Methodist Church.
So I'm going to start this one. I had a seminary professor who was Irish and had this big bushy white beard, and it didn't matter that when I was in seminary he had already been there for at least 20 or 25 years. He still had a very thick Irish accent, and he could tell stories and jokes that you would just listen to. Now, he's got this one joke that I love, and I'm going to tell you that I thought I could tell with an Irish accent. I thought I could tell until I hurt myself. And then I said, no, I'm not going to subject you all to it. The joke is bad enough. So, but it starts off, there was this pastor. He was up preaching in front of a congregation on Sunday morning, and he was in one of those old-style churches, had a really long sanctuary that went to the back, and then, it was about 25% full. Folks kind of scattered all over the place, and sitting down in the front row was this little old man who was there and paying just rapt attention to what the pastor was saying. And the pastor was really building into his sermon that day, and it was one of those hellfire and damnation sermons. And he's getting to one of the high points in the middle, and he starts going, "And there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And the little old man sitting down there in the front row, he raises his hand like he did when he was a schoolboy. And the pastor, who is now in the middle of the next damnation and is getting kind of confused, he stops and he looks at him and he says, "Well, go ahead, man, speak up. What's your question?" And the old man speaks up and he says, "Well, what if you don't have teeth?" Y'all are more awake this morning than they were to Grove Riolia. It took him a little bit longer for that one. Either that or they just don't think I'm funny. I'm not sure which it is. Thanks. But sometimes as a pastor, we have these things that kind of worry us, that and that's one of them. Sometimes something weird is going to happen in the middle of it. Maybe like Tom standing up and throwing a paper airplane back to me, or something like we kind of get worried about what are we going to do in those kind of situations. That's one of them. But there's some other things though that we get concerned about at times, and one of those are things that we say. And maybe it's not just that we say, but everyone says, and we get kind of concerned because y'all can take them one way, can kind of take those things metaphorically and kind of make of it what you will, and you may say, "Oh, well, I know what that means. That means that I just need to make sure that I am doing what I'm telling other people." As pastors, when we see a phrase like that, that gets us a little bit more. It says, "Practice what you preach." We don't get to take that metaphorically. That's literal for us, and that kind of hits us right here. We go, "Wait, huh? No, this is not a good thing. We've got to practice this stuff too?" Now, the hard part of this isn't the practicing of it. The hard part of this is that we get worried. We get that kind of fear begins to settle in, that what if someone says something about me or to me, or what if they're going to judge me for what it is I'm doing, or what if I'm going to judge them when I'm going to do so badly, or that kind of knot begins to form right about here, and that begins to be kind of something that really kind of gets at us. And so we're in this morning looking at what Jesus is saying about judgment. Because that's really what all of this centers around. So there's not any of us that really deal well with this idea of judgment. And so we're looking at what it is that Jesus is trying to get through to us about this morning. Now remember, this is coming at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, so we have everything that we've been talking about for a while that is building up to this, that Jesus has already kind of set the stage for. So keep that in mind also. And so Jesus starts out chapter 7, and he says these words. Actually, he said them in Aramaic. He didn't speak King James English, but you get the point. He says, "Judge not that ye be not judged." This is probably one of the most often quoted verses in the entire Bible. And we get that, and in the King James, it just seems to really kind of strike to the point. Judge not that ye be not judged. It's like you can hear someone sitting behind a great big thing just making that pronouncement onto us. Now we take this, we see that verse, and we have a lot of folks that take it by itself, and we kind of end up at two different extremes on that. And on the one hand, we end up on the extreme that says, well, I'm saved, I'm good. I can make these pronouncements, I can make these statements because I'm saved, I've accepted Jesus into my life, I'm good, I've got this. Now some folks are really well-intentioned about this because they look at it and they say, I'm saved and I want that for other people. And so I may not agree with their methods, but their heart is in the right place in wanting to reach other people and help them to find that same sort of peace and promise that they have. The problem, though, is with the folks who take that and they use that as like blanket permission to judge anyone and everyone around them. They say, well, I'm saved, I am good to go, I can make whatever statements I want now. Because I've got this taken care of, that's my out, that's how I can get around, and I can judge people, and I'm going to do so with force. That's one extreme of this. On the other extreme of that is that we've got some folks who take that verse, which is already not very long, and they shorten it down to about 2 words, and they say, judge not. And it becomes, well, I can't judge anyone. I can't, and Jesus says, don't judge. So we're not going to judge. We aren't going to do that. Now, there's some issues with that also. Because what we end up finding is that Jesus is actually cautioning us in this against both of these extremes. Because Jesus knows that more often than not, we find ourselves somewhere in the middle of that, where we don't like to judge. We know how complicated and emotional and fraught with tension and trouble that can be, and so we don't like to do that. But we also know that at some point, you got to make a judgment. You can't just not do anything. You've got to do that somewhere. And so, what we need is how is Jesus getting us around that? How is he helping us to deal and to understand that? And we can get there when we look at the full statement that Jesus is making. When he says this, he says, this is verses 1 and 2, the entire statement, judge not that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged, and with what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. Nowhere in there does Jesus say not to judge, but he is saying, be prepared. Be prepared to if you're going to make judgments, be prepared to be judged by that exact same standard. Make sure that you are ready for that. And to know that that's going to happen. And Jesus is saying that because he's dealing with the same kind of folks that we deal with. And we've got kind of a few examples of that. We've got the folks that say, don't do what I do what I say. I had a 6th grade teacher in grade school that would say this all the time to us, but mostly that was because she forgot something. She said, no, I didn't mean that. Do what I meant, not what it was I actually said. That's okay. It's the folks who say do what I do, or do what I don't do what I do what I say. When they are judging others for something that they do, but then they go off and they do it their own. That's a problem. That presents a problem for us. So that's one group. Another one is this: the kids don't try this at home group. This is the one where we've got some folks who are more than willing to be the judges of who can do certain things and who can't do certain things. And we never really figure out what the requirements are behind that, how folks get into one group versus another group. It all seems kind of dependent on the judgment of the one person involved. And so kids don't try this at home. It's okay for us to do, but not for you to do it. So that's another group. And then we've got, this is my favorite one. This is the one that my little brother and I experienced the most, especially on car rides. Sitting in that back seat. For those of you who have more than 2 kids, I'm not sure how back seats ever worked. Because we had to have that neutral zone in the back, that little buffer space of about 8 inches, where the third person normally sat. And my little brother, we needed that because that was how we kept from, killing each other on long car rides. And at some point, you know how this goes, right? Where you are doing everything you can to antagonize your sibling without actually breaking any of the rules that your parents have told you. So you aren't getting over into that neutral zone. You aren't you're just kind of poking, you aren't actually touching anyone, but you're just kind of putting your finger over there just a little bit. My little brother would complain to my mom would say, don't do that, and I would say, I'm not doing anything. And I wasn't, but she would respond back with, but you're thinking it. Well, yeah, but that's beside the point. I didn't actually do it. That's one way that happens. But how many times does the other part of this happen, which is, we'll say, don't do that. And they'll say, well, I'm not doing anything. But then we'll say, but you're thinking it, and we really weren't. But now we are. Now you put that idea into my head, and now I'm like, hey, I can do this. That sounds like fun. This is going to be a good time. That's a problem also. That's where the real trouble starts. And all this starts because of what's going on inside of us when we are making those kind of judgments, or the folks that we're around are falling into those groups. And Jesus begins to address this in the next couple of verses. He says this. This is verses 3 and 4, not 1 and 2. I can't always count very well for some reason. So he says this. He says, thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. Jesus is really kind of driving home to this point. And he is saying to us with that statement, your insecurities, your fears, your worries are not justification enough to judge other people by. If you are judging others out of your own sense of insecurity or your own worries or your own issues that you're dealing with, that's not enough to judge anyone by. First take care of your own business, and then you can see about what's going on otherwise. Now here's the place where we can take this to the next step where it becomes really important for us to see this. Because we can take this another step forward, because who is it that is the worst judge of ourselves? Yeah, I hear all going, it's me. Like, I know I am the worst judge of who I am. Other people can say, I'm like, no, I got you all beat, because I know what's going on back here in the back of my head. And Jesus is saying, don't do that. You're holding yourself to a different standard than you hold someone else. Or as I ran across it one time, I don't know who it was that said it the first time this way, but I've seen it in lots of other places. They say, don't compare your bloopers to someone else's highlight reel. And you just stop and think about it for a second, because we know where our mistakes are, where our goof-ups are, where our worries and our concerns are, where we know that we're faking it, but everyone else thinks we've got a handle on the situation. We know where all of that stuff is, and the worst part is, we know what everyone else doesn't know. We know where all the mistakes are that no one else knows about, all the goof-ups are that no one else knows about, and all of that is playing on a loop in the back of our heads. You know that time when things get really hard and they get really difficult, and that loop starts back up and it just keeps going? That's what Jesus is talking about. But then we look at other people and we say, but they've got it all together. They seem to, everything just seems effortless for them. They don't make any mistakes. They seem to know, how to get from point A to point B to point C, and they do that without, having their GPS to tell them to turn around and make a U-turn. They know how to get from each of those places. They've got their act together, and we compare ourselves to them. We say, we just don't compare. We don't measure up. And Jesus is saying, don't do that. You're getting this mixed up. You're judging yourself by a completely different standard than you are thinking about who they are. In this situation, we've got a beam in one eye, we've got a mote in the other eye, and we are judging her, and we're battling ourselves cross-eyed in between somewhere, because that's what we're doing to ourselves. And Jesus is saying, that's not the way we do this. And before we get to all of this part on judgment, Jesus reminds us of who God is and what is most important in the middle of this. He says in chapter 6, verse 26, behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? Are ye not much better than they? Jesus is reminding us, who is God? Who is our God? And more importantly than that, think about all of the importance he places on the seemingly most insignificant parts of his creation. And isn't he going to worry about us? Isn't he going to care for us just that much more? This is huge. This is where we know that we have a God where we can leave our insecurities, we can leave our worries, we can leave those things that play on that loop in the back of our heads. We can leave those with God because our God is much bigger than that. Bigger than all of the stuff that we have. So when Jesus is saying, judge not that ye be not judged, he's saying, it's okay to judge, but make sure you're doing it in the right way. Make sure you're doing it in ways that are helpful. Make sure you're doing it in ways that show compassion and understanding, that show the love of God, that don't reach out to tear the people, the community, the folks, the things around us down because of our insecurities. If we are judging things based on the stuff that we are insecure about, that we are worried about, that's tying us up in knots here, Jesus is saying, that's not the way to do this. There is a better way. There is a more helpful way. There is a way where we can rely on God to help us do that and not be dictated to by our own worries and our own fears. We have to remember who our God is. And so when we go out to judge, we can do so without the weeping and the gnashing of teeth and without whatever other damnation du jour is out there. We can find a way of getting past that, where we can find ways of reaching out and helping and even judging, but that helps to build the community up around us, that helps to build folks up around us, that helps to further God's kingdom in this world. So let us go this week. Let us go and find ways to let go of, at least in some ways, because I know what happens. I can try and let go of all that stuff that's causing those knots. I'm not very good at it, but I can at least try. But we can go and we can at least begin to make the attempt to let go of that stuff that causes us to be insecure and to be worried. To let go of that, rely on God, and use that to help build the world around us. And not bring it down, but to see what God is doing, not just in us, not just in the other folks here in this church, but in the community and the world that we're part of. Let us go and do that in His name.